This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, again, Rabbi, as we prepare for Parshas Shelach, Haba Aleinu L'Tova. Welcome to all the great Talmidei Chacham here in the Young Israel of Kew Garden Hills, New York City. And for all those listening on JRoot Radio, TorahAnytime.com, the Torah tells us maybe the most well-known pasuk in this week's Parsha. Eile Shemois HaAnashim. The above are the names of the men Asher Shalach Moshe La'Soras Ha'aretz that Moshe sent out to spy the land. Vayikra Moshe called Yehoshua ben Nun Yehoshua. Comes the Ben Ish Chai in the Sofer Ben Ish Chai Drashas. Don't say, yeah, I heard that Sofer. You never heard of it. It's not the Ben Ish Chai on Halacha that has Drashas in it, and it's not Drashas Ben Ish Chai. It's not Oid Yosef Chai. It's Sofer Ben Ish Chai Drashas. Anyway, he says that why does it need to say that Moshe called Yehoshua ben Nun Yehoshua? It already said his name is Yehoshua ben Nun, right? It said Lematei Ephraim Yehoshua ben Nun. So once it identified him by his father's name, it should just say Vayikra Moshe leHoshea Yehoshua. The ben Nun is unnecessary. We've already every word in the Torah is counted, is exact. There's nothing superfluous. Once we know Moshe is not Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe ben Amram leimar. No, it doesn't say that. We know who Moshe is, so we know who Yehoshua is. Why does it have to repeat again? He's called Ben Nun.
Why is it Ben Nun, not Ben Nun?
I wasn't going to talk about it, but once we're on the subject, look at number 4. It happens to be another question you can ask. Says the Sofer Vayas Avram, Rabbi Avram Zusman Abrahams. He says, I heard a beautiful thing in the name of Rav Moshe Sofer of Preshberg. If anybody wants to come this summer, the trip is on. There are 5 slots left. 5 slots left to the Kever Chasam Sofer in Pressburg. 2 nights, 3 days. The Monday after Tisha B'Av. 2 nights. B'siyata d'shmaya. Anyway, the Chasam Sofer asked the file, Ma sheyesh chiruk tachas habez. Why is there a chiruk under the beis? Why is it bin nun? Also, Reb Donald asked this question. Ma she'en kein zois b'chol ha-Tanakh. In the Gans Tanakh, nobody's called bin nun. It doesn't say that Moshe bin Amram. It doesn't say Levi bin Yaakov. It doesn't say Yaakov bin Yitzchak. It doesn't say Yitzchak bin Avram. Vas epis, it comes to Yeshua, and he's bin Nun. Sham tevas ben Nakot tachza beis segal. Okay, Rabbi say. So we have 2 questions. Why repeat again that Yehoshua Yikra Moshe leHoshea bin Nun Yehoshua? It already said he's ben Nun. And number 2, why is he bin? He should be ben.
Here's another question. Why did he add a yud to his name?
Oh, another good question. Why he has a yud? So there, we know that Rashi tells us that Yehoshua was in sakana of being influenced by the Meraglim, so he added a yud as a tefillah, ka Yoshiacha me'atzas Meraglim. But be it as it may, let's take a look at number 5 and tell you a story. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, yud shenata HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going, where did the yud come from? It's not like, let's say you want to change somebody's name. Let's say you have a guy, his name is, any volunteers? Any volunteers? Let's say you want to call you Yehosef. Yeah? Where are we going to get the hay from? You can't just add there's no letter bank. Okay, by the way, we're going to take a look. Where did we get the letter from? So Amar Shimon Karchel, Yod Shenata HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Misarai. It came from Sarai. So basically like this. Here's the original question. Avram became Avraham. Sarai became Sarah. Where did Avraham get the hay from? So they took the yud, they cut it in half, and they made it into 2 hays. By the way, there's a concept that the letter hay is a very fertile letter. In order to have children, you need a hay. For example, Sarai couldn't, Avram couldn't, Sarah, Avraham they could. Yitzchak didn't have a hay, but Rivka had a hay. It took some time. Rachel was in big trouble. Leah's okay. She's Leah. But Yaakov, no hay. Rachel, no hay. So what did she do? Bilhah has 2 hays. So Rachel took Bilhah, the Arizal said, and she has, what? Yeah, I'm not sure how he says it, but she has two hay, so she has an extra hay to go around. The remez is, the Shelach Kodesh writes, hay l'chazara, it says. Hay is the fertility-inducing ice of the aleph base. But be it as it may, Amar Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Yud shenata HaKadosh Baruch Hu miSarai, God took the Yud from Sarai. Now the Yud has nowhere to go. Letters, you see, when you take letters out of places, they have nowhere to rest. You know, they're hostels and they're hotels, but they're no letter makaimais. So the letter is tas upayreach lefnei kisar shagash, it's floating around. Amar lefana ribono shalom mishvel shani ketan shabi yosef. It says tzaddikas. Just because I'm the smallest of the letters, you took me out of Sarah, the righteous one. Amar lo yakadosh baruch l'shavar hayis mishma shel nekeva. Don't worry, you're getting an upgrade. You used to be in the name of a nekeva. And Uvesoif and Shalosius used to be at the end. First of all, you're now going to be a Zachar. Over Roishan. Shenamar vayikra Moshe Yehoshua benon. Yehoshua. So now we learn that the Yud of Yehoshua used to be in Sarai. It moved. It got an upgrade in two ways. It got higher salary and insurance. It moved to a Zachar and it moved to the beginning. Yeah? One second. One second. But here's the problem. The problem is, so you got the Yud from Sarai. Yeah? So put a Yud in front of Hoshea, and what will it be? No, it will be nothing because the Yud has no Nekudais. Where are you going to get the two dots from? Nu Rabbi Sai. That's why it used to be Hoshea ben Nun. But now we needed two dots. So we took, of the three dots under Ben, we took two, and it became Yehoshua ben Nun. Says the Chasam Sofer. That's why it's ben Nun. Because the Yud came from Sarai. But the question is, what about the two dots? So the two dots were borrowed from the Ben. By the way,
before it changed name was also bin Nun.
Okay, one second. We're going to get to the questions. Says the Sefer Vayasavram in the name of the Heilig Chasam Sofer. Va'amar da'atamu kach. Mipnei shemetchila hayu shemay rak Hoshea. Va'az haya be'emes gam kein segel tachas habez Hoshea ben Nun. Amnam achir nitosav loy oisyud from Sarai, like Chazal say. So we need to add nekudos under the yud. Where are we going to get it from? Therefore, we took two dots from the segel, which was under the base, and we put it under the yud to be a shva. Therefore, we have to remove two dots, and we're only left with one. Mamela, it becomes Hoshea bin Nun. Okay. The question is, what do you mean he heard from the Chasam Sofer? Where does the Chasam Sofer say this? So I'm going to share with you. But first, I'm going to tell you Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. I'm going to tell you an Oyev Yisrael on it for no extra charge. Look at number 7. Elaine, Shimon, Govraya, Deshadar, Moshe. These are the names of the men that Moshe sent. Le'alala. To spy, says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. From here we see that the word Elul means to spy. That's the purpose of the month, to spy out your heart. Yasara, the land. When Moshe saw the humility of Yehoshua, Kara Moshe Shabar Nun Yehoshua. He called him Yehoshua. What in the world is Targum Yonasan ben Uziel talking about? When Moshe saw Yeshua's humility, he changed his name. What's the humility of Joshua got to do with a name change? Only if you're humble you could have a name change? What is this all about? So let me tell you what the Oyev Yisrael says. It's not on the sheet. Oyev Yisrael says two hakdamos regarding Tchias HaMesim. Number one, in order to have Tchias HaMesim goes in alphabetical order. So if your name starts with an Aleph, you go first. Beis, second. Gimel, third. Every generation goes in alphabetical order. So Adam, and Avram, then fine. The next thing is, the Oyev Yisrael says, someone who's an Anav has an earlier Tchias HaMesim. Memela like this. Moshe considered changing Yeshua's name. The problem is you can't change his name from Hoshea to Yehoshua because you would be delaying his Tchias HaMesim. But when Moshe saw he was an Anav, and he would have first dibs of Tchias HaMesim anyway, he was able to change his name, says the Oyev Yisrael. But you don't need to know that for today's Shiur. So if it's going to confuse you, just forget that. If you could hang on to that and pay attention to the rest of the Shiur, even better. Comes the Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer is going on the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. Targum Yonasan ben Uziel again says, when Moshe saw Joshua's humility, he was able to change his name. Says the Chasam Sofer, why is his name Bin Nun? His name should be Ben. There are two reasons. Number one, how many gateways of wisdom are there? 50. How many were given to Moshe? Rosh Hashanah Yiraf, Chamishim Shari Bina Nivrolam, Mechulam Nitna LaMoshe, Chasar Achas, Shenemar, Vatachasreyu, Ma'at Me'alekim. So even though the Gemara says he didn't have the 50th, he didn't have it fully, but he had some of it, which he gave over to his Talmud, who was Mizboinen in the Shar Nun. That's why he was called Yehoshua bin. He was Mizboinen, he had Havana, Nun in the Shar Nun. Says Chasam Sofer. That's why he was called Bin Nun. Matzino's at base to Amen. One is to teach that he was Mizboinen in the Shar Nun. Afagav the Shar Nun loinite, and even to Moshe. Miktsas Bina he had. Moshe had it. And Bin is the lashon of his baininus. By the way, this first pshat that the Chasam Sofer says is found in the Megala Amukos in the 12th Perush and his 252 Perushim on the Pasuk Va'aschana Hashem Beisi Lemar. The Megala Amukos says Yehoshua is called Bin Nun, a lashon of Bin, Tavin, because they're not Nun Sharibina. Amazing thing. Who remembers this Gemara? The Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Daled. Asu dardeki lebei knishta, lebei midrasha, va'amri milsa. They said things that even from the time of Yehoshua bin Nun, they never said such beautiful things. What did they darshan? Aleph Beis, Gimel Daled. And they darshan Aleph Bina, Gimel Dalim. Learn Torah, do Chesed. Aleph Bina, Gimel Dalim. Learn Torah, do Chesed. They invoked the term Bina. Bina! That's why the question is, why does the Gemara say they said something so beautiful that even in the times of Yeshua ben Nun, it was not taught like that? Why are we invoking Yeshua ben Nun? Why the emphasis on Yeshua ben Nun? The answer is, says in Megala Mukos, that Yehoshua knew all the Sharei Bina, therefore he's called Ben Nun. Therefore his name is mentioned because the Dardikim, the children, are darshaning in Yonei Bina, Aleph Bina. Be it as it may, that's the first reason he's called Bin Nun. The second reason, says the Chasam Sofer, the Yud of Yehoshua is the Yud of Sarai, and in Sarai's name it was without any Nekudais, and now it needs Nekudais, and even the Nekudais are, even though they're from Torah Sheba'al Peh, you can't add to them, so therefore we had to borrow from Ben and make it Bin. Question. When Moshe called him Yehoshua, with the Yud, and he had to take a Shva and put it under the Yud, so he had to call him Bin. So now we're not going to know necessarily that he knows the Nun Shari Bina. Because people might say, you know why he's called Bin Nun? He's called Ben Nun is because we had to borrow the extra 2 dots. It's not that he knows the 50th gate. He's not misboinen on the Shar Nun. Maybe he doesn't know nothing about the Shar Nun. Why is he called Ben Nun? Because we had to borrow the dots. Maybe it would be embarrassing to Yehoshua. People are not going to know that he knows the Shar Nun. But when Moshe saw that Yeshua was an Anav, and he didn't care what people thought about him, he was able to borrow those 2 dots, even though people wouldn't necessarily know that he's misboinen on the Shar Nun. Mar Rabbi say, look at number 10. Who's number 10? Agar the Kala, the Bnei Yissaschar. And the Bnei Yissaschar says, the Mefarshim are bothered. Why is he called Bin, Bechiruk? And everybody knows what the Balei Hapshat say. We'll have to take a look at the Radak in the beginning of Yehoshua. But I heard from the Admar Harav HaKadosh, Mereno Harav, B'Shem Ziknai. I don't know who he's quoting over here. A big Admar. A very chashuv Admar. it is known that the Yud of Sarai complained until Hashem had to join him up with Yehoshua. Then the Yud of Sarai has no Nekudos. So where do the Nekudos come from? It comes from the Ben. Therefore he's called Ben. The same thing that the Chasam Sofer says. Now, why do I bring from the Agar Dekala? First I want to show you that this Messiah runs the full gamut of the traditions of Klal Yisrael. But there's a concept the Zohar mentions that the 10 Nekudos correspond to the 10 Sfiros. Each Nekuda is a different Sfira. The Nekuda of a Chirik is Netzach. Right? We say, what are the Sfiros? Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hoid, Yesod, Malchus, Chachma, Bina, and Das, or Kesar. Well, it says the Agar Dekala, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, you give some of your Hoid to Yehoshua. That Yeshua prophesied through the Hoid of Moshe. And therefore, we know that, what was Moshe's Midah? Does anybody know? Aaron was Hoid, and Moshe was Netzach. So if Yehoshua took some of Moshe's Hoid, he was also connected to his Netzach. But be it as it may, the Chirik of Yehoshua, of Bin, was the Midah of Netzach. Okay, we'll take a look at number 11. The Ben Ish Chai cites this tradition in the name of the Chachmei Rabbanei Ashkenaz. And that is, Rabbi Isai, the Chachmei Ashkenaz says, every single Ben in the Torah is a Segal, except for Ben Nun is a Chirik. So they say the same thing again. The Yud came from Sarai, and it complained. So Hashem said, don't worry, you're going to be upgraded to a Zachar B'tchila. Okay. But here's the thing. Who told Moshe to give the Yud to Yehoshua? Who told him to? We don't find Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor Kira Hosheya. He did it on his own. Vinei Kanvatzin Moshe Rabbeinu Chidush Me'atzma. He gave him a Yud. We don't find Hashem commanded him. But Vadai Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't be Mechadesh Dor Medat unless Hashem said, unless he must have learned it from something HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. So Moshe figured out from something HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him that a Yud should be added. How? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu knew the Yud's complaint, the Yud was screaming, "Hey, I'm homeless," the Yud said. "I'm just floating around here in heaven. I need a home." Now, Moshe Rabbeinu never heard Hashem's response that you're going to go to Yehoshua. But rather, he knew Baruch HaKodesh, that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the Yud, that I'm going to give you to a tzaddik. But he didn't know which tzaddik. He didn't know it's going to be Yehoshua. Maybe it's going to be Yechves. It's going to be Chagai. Maybe he'll become Yechagai. How did Moshe know it's Yehoshua? He learned it from Hashem. Why? Because he says, Shama koidem zami pivis barach shema ishel Yehoshua ben Nun, Shama le ben Nun bechirik v'lei besegel kasher ben. Oh, you ready for this? Says the Ben Ish Chai. Why in pasuk you give him pasuk ches, you give him pasuk ches, lemate Ephraim Hoshea ben Nun? Moshe Rabbeinu was a mafli. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu said the names of these Meraglim, Hashem called Yehoshua Ben Nun. Why did he call him Ben Nun? He's Ben Nun. Must be because Hashem is taking out two dots from the Ben and making it Bin. Taking out two dots, that means the two dots have to go under some letter. Oh, says Moshe, a little detective work. If the Rebbe Shalom is taking two dots out of the Ben, must be Yeshua is getting another letter. Which letter? There's only one letter that's homeless. It must be the Yud of Sarai. So now Moshe put two and two together, and he added the Yud. From the fact that Hashem called him Bin, he figured out it must be Yeshua's and adding a letter to his name. Ach midvar v'yisbrach lamad shu Yeshua yan kasher shama koydem zami piv yisbrach shema Yeshua ben Nun. Shama sha'amar bin Nun b'chirik v'lei b'segel kasher ben kashar ben az diktik laman ashtan hazeh must be a la'oisa yud shel Sarai is Yoshua's, and since it had no nekudas when it was in Sarai, And if he's going to be in Yehoshua, it's going to have a shva. That's why it's not a segal ben, but rather bin. Therefore, how did Moshe know to call him Yehoshua? What gave it away? The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu called him bin. So that's why the pasuk says, "Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea Benun Yehoshua." We know who his father is. Why repeat again Benun? Because why did he call him Yehoshua? It's because Rebbe Shem called him Benun. That's why Moshe called him Yehoshua. V'chein mikach hakriya shel Benun shesham mipiv yisbarach haven sharai lakar Yehoshua b'tazus hayud shel sarai. This is what it means. Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea. Because it's not good bin, therefore it's called Yehoshua. That's why he called him Yehoshua. Okay, now let me tell you something. A few years ago we gave a shiur on the following personality. Rav Immanuel Chai Riki, the author of the Mishnah's Chasidim, who's buried in Italy. But we never really learned from his Svarim. So I'm going to read to you what he writes in his Sefer on Tehillim, Al Pi Kabbalah Choshev Machshavos. He says this whole episode that we're saying with the flying Yud, who was homeless and found a home in Yehoshua, and the Chiriks moving, is all alluded to in the Tefillah of David HaMelech. Zeh hashar la'Hashem tzadikim yavayavai. How's that? Like this. What's the gateway of Hashem? The gateway of God, what's the big gate that we're all headed toward? Olam Haba. Olam Haba is created with a Yud. That's Zeh hashar la'Hashem tzadikim yavayavai. Zeh hashar la'Hashem. You know, that's better? That sounds more familiar? Yeah? It's tzadikim yav. What is the shar la'Hashem that tzadikim come? The Yud, Olam Haba. And what does that Yud say? You know what the Yud says? Oidecha Hashem ki ani sani. I thank you, Hashem, that you answered me. Why? The fact that you took me out of Sarah's name, Vayihi li Yeshua. It was added to Yeshua's name. Oisi Yeshua. That Yud was complaining until it was Nitna Roish. Because it was a back seat to a Nekeva, now it's front seat to a Zachar. So, Even. Now it's like this. The Oisi HaTorah are called Avanim, stones, or the building blocks of the Torah. Even Moasu Aboinim, that Oisio, that's called an Even. The Oisios that are called Avonim. Moasu Aboinim, who are the builders of Klal Yisrael? Avram and Sarah. Because when they daven to Hashem, that Hashem should give them children. Hashem said, what do you need children? Children is Olam Hazeh. You're going to get Olam Haba. They said, look, we need a Bissel Olam Hazeh also. We need Kinderlach. So Hashem said, but you have Olam Haba, you have a Yud. So Hashem cut the Yud, the Olam Haba, and he made into hay, which is Olam Hazeh, created with the hay. Hutzrecha Eis Yud, Sheha Moilidol Olam Haba. The Yud was kicked out, was evicted. Kedei, to give a hay, to have children, like the Zohar says. So it was an Even, it was a letter, Moasu Aboinim, and it was a back seat, Hoisa, L'Rosh Pina, it became front seat. V'yois L'Rosh Pina. Pina is Rosh Tevois, Pri Nun Hoshea. It was given in the beginning of Yehoshua ben Nun, who is a Navi, who is known as Pina. Like Chazal say in the Pasuk, Mimeno Pina, Mimeno Yased. Why? Me'es Hashem hoisazais. To put it in Sarai in the beginning, so that she should... Now, why did Sarai have a Yud in the beginning? There's a Bir Halacha that brings down. The Pasuk says, V'sarai Eshes Avram, V'sarai Akara... Lo Yalada. The question is, it's not right. Once we know she's an Akara, no kidding, Lo Yalada. So the Mekovalim say that the Biyos of Avram and Sarah, or anybody, even if they don't produce children, they produce holy neshamas. They bring the holy neshamas downstairs. Be it as it may, why did Hashem give her a Yud in the beginning? So that to those who are Yoidei Chein, those who know the secrets of the Torah, they understand the Yud was so that those Bios are moiled, the nefashos of the Gerim. And if she had a Hay in the beginning, she wouldn't have been able to do that. And therefore, says the Choshev Machshavos, this is what it means. Oidcha Hashem, I thank you Hashem, Who thanks Hashem the Yud? Ki ani sani, that you answered me and you moved me. Vatihi li lishua, you gave me to Yehoshua. Even mo'asu abaynim, the letter that Avram and Sarah despised, haisa l'roish pina, became the beginning of pre-nun hoshea. Why? Me'ez Hashem, haisa zois, hina flois beinenu, it's beyond us. Okay, just bringing a Maramakom here who says that this whole episode is marumas in these words of Tehillim. Okay. Mar Rabbi say, here is a problem that some of the Parshas ask, that the Ben Ish Chai may have already answered. Question number 1 is as follows.
What are you reading?
What?
What are you reading?
I'm now reading number 13 and 14.
Thank you.
So why is he called Bin Nun? He's called Bin Nun because we needed to free up 2 dots to put under the Yud. Here's the problem, Rabbi say. There's still a dot that's not accounted for. What's the dot? He used to be called Hoshea with a tzeireh, and now he's called Yehoshua with a shuruk. So there are 3 dots now. So where did the 3rd dot come from? How did Hoshea become Yehoshua? Very nice. We took 2 dots out of the ben and we made it bin. But where did this 3rd dot come from? Where did this 3rd dot come from? Ask the Sefer Vayas Avram, Amnam Ken Adayin, Amnam Ken Adayin Lo Zachisi Lahavin Mehechem Matzo Einu Kuda Achas Yisera. That's under the shin. It was only 2 dots with Serei, and now it became a shuruk. Also, I found in a magazine, in a Yate Neman, in Tavshin Samach Daled, somebody brings this kasha also. Here's another question we have to deal with. Why is he called Bin Nun? Because the Yud needed 2 dots. That can't be. Because he's already called Bin Nun even before he was Yehoshua. First of all, the pasuk says, "Amate Ephraim Hoshea Bin Nun." And also, what does it mean? He called Hoshea Bin Nun Yehoshua. It should say he called Hoshea Ben Nun Yehoshua. Because before he's Yehoshua, it's still Ben Nun. So the Ben Ish Chai said that Moshe figured out from the fact that Hashem called him Bin Nun that he must have already put 2 dots in the bank account for what? For a yud that he needs to add. So there's a Sofer called Lahatzdik Kodesh who asked this question in the Chasam Sofer. Flek Lahatzdik Kodesh, they're psukim mamish against the Chasam Sofer. T'mu'amai divrei Maran Chasam Sofer are psukim ufrashim like Dvarav. Why? It says L'mat Evrei Moshe Ben Nun. Or Ben Nun. If you're according to Chasam Sofer, it should say L'mat Evrei Moshe Ben Nun. This question, I don't have any respite. But Chas v'Shalom, the Chasam Sofer who didn't know these psukim, I mean, he's commenting on these psukim. Mar Rabbi say Yehoshua's name had a lot of movement in it. First it was Hoshea, and then it was Bin. Let me tell you a story. There's a long history about Yehoshua's name, even before all of this. Because there's another Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer says that Yehoshua never had boys. He only had Banim Zacharim. Why? Because he said, Adoini Moshe Kilo'im. What do you mean Adoini Moshe? That's Rabbi to you. He called his Rabbi by his name, so he didn't have Banim Zacharim. You hear this, Chazal? That Yehoshua, he called his Rabbi by his name, he had only Nekevos. What? That's what it says. That's what Chazal say. He had boys.
Didn't we say that Yehoshua was one of the people who never committed an Avera?
No.
Not Yehoshua?
No such thing. Says Chasam Sofer, Velule de Mistafina, he would have said as follows. What was his name when he was born? Up till now, what we would have said. When this man was born, what did his parents call him? What did Nun call him? What did Nun call him? Rabbi Nun to you. Rabbi Nun said, V'yikarei Shema Yisrael, Hoshea. I mean, that's what it says. V'yikra Moshe Hoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. Says the Chasam Sofer, no. When he was born, his name was Yehoshua. However, because he sinned by calling in last week's Parsha Bahaloischa, and he said, Adoni Moshe Kiloim, we took the Yud out of his name. That was his punishment. He said, Adoni Moshe Kiloim. He said Moshe's name.
But who said it?
Chazal say. Chazal say that Yehoshua sinned by calling Moshe's name. So they took away his Yud. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu sees, by the Meraglim,
If he took away his yud, there must have been the kudos with that yud that are floating around now also.
so if he took away his Yud, right, so that means he took away Nekudos as well. Okay? That means he took away a letter, and he took away Nekudos. By the Meraglim, now there is a Chazal, I don't know where it is right now, where the Anshe Knesset Agdol call him Yeshua Yud Shin Vav Ayin. But likewise, they took away the Yud when he called his Rabbi by his name. But now Moshe says we got to save the guy. So now what do we need? We got to bring in a Yud. But that Yud is lost. You can't bring in the same Yud. Once you lose it, there's a rule about losing Yuds. Let me tell you the rule. The rule is once you lose a Yud, you can never put it back.
So you got to get a different yud.
So you need to get a different Yud. Where do we get another Yud from? In other words, I have a question. How did Moshe know to call him Yehoshua? Maybe call him Hoshei. That's because he knew what his name used to be. So it's, we'll just make it back. But it's a different Yud. Whose Yud did he take? He took the Yud of an Akara. That's why he was punished that he didn't have Banim Zacharim.
There's still another yud floating around someplace there.
No, but you can once you lose a Yud, here's the thing. If you lose, let me tell you another rule. If you lose a Yud, Lara, if you're punished by losing a Yud, you can't bring that Yud back. If you're given a bracha to get a hey, that Yud is still available. Okay, this you know, right?
Is there a book that has all these rules?
Yes, there is. Yes. Uchshara Moshe Rabbeinu tzarach la'atzila mimeraglim. He added a Yud that was taken from Sarai, like the Medrash says. Now we know the Yud is a letter that's for Olam Haba, not for Olam Hazeh. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it two hays, one for Avram and one for Sarah. And the Yud was added to Yehoshua, therefore he didn't have a Zachar. Okay. So it comes out then, the Sefer Lahatz de Kodesh says, that I found that the Chasam Sofer himself says, okay. In other words, he wants to say that the reason why, the question is, where did the extra dot of Yehoshua come from? So l'chayra, what he's saying is, it must have come from the Shva that used to be under the original Yud. But then the question is, there's still a free dot somewhere floating around, because we only used one of those. We used two of the dots to become Yeh, and one of the dots to become Yeshua, and there's still a free dot floating around. So one thing we're learning is, if anybody needs an extra dot, the chayra, there's an extra dot available. But he says somehow this would answer why he was called Bin even before we took away. Even before he took away. Even before he took away. Even before he added the Yud. So look what he writes in number 17. He says, it says, Al Kapanim Nimsa. There's no stira, because the psukim before are before he was removed the yud. Oh, listen to what he's saying. He was originally called Hoshea ben Nun. Why was he called Hoshea ben Nun? Actually, that means at birth he was called Yehoshua ben Nun. Because where are those two dots going to come from? Then he lost the Yud. Rabbi say, I'm giving you what to think about. If you could come up with the meaning of where did this extra dot of Yehoshua come from? It's all about a dot. Whoever gets... Sometimes I always give you the answers. I give you a lot of answers today. I give you most of the answers, but I can't give you everything. That's the $1 million question. Where did the extra dot of Yeshua come from? Where did it come from? So now I'm going to tell you an idea like this, but it doesn't explain it fully. Unless you say, okay, I got it. You ready? Got it. Remember we said he started off as Yehoshua. So the Yud was taken away. What happened to those two dots? So the dots were put in escrow. So one dot, l'chayra, went to make it Yehoshua. What happened to the extra dot? You ready for this? I got it.
He was Yehoshua to start with.
He was Yehoshua to start, but then he lost the Yud.
The two dots.
But he lost the two dots.
They went to escrow.
So one of the dots became Yehoshua.
He was Yehoshua.
No, he was Hoshea.
Oh, you said Yehoshua. Okay.
Right? So one of the dots was a short, but where did the fourth dot go? Yeah? I'm not available yet. Where did the fourth dot go? Fourth dot went like this. Sarah, what was her name? Sarai. Says the Shla, what's the difference between a patach and a kamatz? A patach is a vav. A patach is a vav, and a kamatz is a vav and a yud, which is a dot, which is gematria 10. So l'char, the fourth dot made Sarai, Sa-ra-ah. Galeinai v'abitin influence the Torah Sechashkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.